Hello, friends. It's Lisa, and I'm back with a sequel to my previous video. It's a few videos ago now on the Spectrum Noir Colorista metallic markers. I don't know. They have a lot of, it's a long name, but they were really fun, and I had a lot of fun using them, so I wanted to try out some more advanced techniques. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm creating this whole mixed media art piece with those markers as the main part. There are some other things that I use, like this black gesso from Prima. I would say I do use quite a few products from Prima as well, just because I like them. So here you can see I'm using this silicone brush. It's the first time I've ever used it, and I liked it. It's a lot easier to clean up. The one thing I do wish is that it didn't have such sharp corners, that like at the ends it curved up a little bit so you wouldn't get such harsh lines. But overall it was good. So I had tried the metallic markers on a black gessoed piece before, and they worked out really well. So I decided to start there rather than on a piece of black cardstock. So here I'm showing you the antique bronze, burnished copper, and gold nugget, and then I also use that gold plate to create a stone wall. You'll see as I create it, I do go back in, and I don't actually show that in the video, but I go back in and add some more rocks a little bit later because I just don't think it's enough. Surprise, I don't think anything's ever enough. I always love watching those card videos, and they're clean and simple cards, and they look so beautiful. And then I start making something, and I'm like, you know what I should do? I should add more. You would think I would be able to stop, but like clean and simple is just not what I do. It doesn't ever happen for me. If it happens for you, then I'm impressed because I cannot do it. It just doesn't happen. So anyway, I'm just coloring through the stencil, and I'm using the brush end just to capture more, cover more. It's going really well. My goal in this wall is to try and not have the colors, like the same color, touch each other, if that makes sense. It's an unavoidable, but in general, that's what I'm trying to do, is break the colors up so that you get more of a break between them. So it's starting to look very 70s. I don't know if you've ever seen those rock walls, but from like the 70s. Anyway, so here I'm looking at my little swatches, and I decide this Art Basics sand to use. And what I want to try here is mixing the color with some of this sand texture paste, and it works out really good. I should have done this step after a step that's coming up, but you'll see that and you'll realize why. The sand texture, this was the first time I ever used it. It's a little hard to get through the stencil, especially this stencil which has such tiny little holes. It is my favorite stencil, but it's a little hard. It does turn out really cool. And even as it dries, you still get a lot of that shine. Now here, I wanted to try it with just regular soft gloss gel. So I do that, and then I realize that the blue is going to cover the silver, which kind of goes against the whole point of having the silver. So I really should have done this first and got that light blue down. I'm not sure if it really shows up against the black too well. It shows up a tiny bit, but not great. Now you can see I was trying to figure out a way to get it back to that silver, and I get it maybe a tiny bit, but not very much. The blue just kind of covers the silver. So the next step I decided to do was to add some butterflies. Now I don't have a whole lot of dies and stamps. I had a house fire, and so I'm still building up my craft stash. So I do have a Cricut Maker. So I was like, well, I can just cut some out. So that's what I'm doing here. Is I decided I'd have a base layer and the black outline layer. Now I do cut out the body. I had a different plan. I don't end up using it, but I cut out 3 different sizes, and you'll see here I'm cutting out 2 of each size so that I can have a front and a back, because I wanted the butterfly to be dimensional, and so that's kind of the only way I knew how to do that. So I'm not going to show you the machine cutting it out, but it cuts it out, and it takes a little bit, but it's easy peasy, and there you go. It did take me a while to peel all of them up. I think what I should have done is put that piece of paper through my Xyron machine and then cut it out. I have a lot better luck when I do that, and I didn't do that this time. So learn from my mistake, put it through the Xyron before you cut it out. And I would say that if you're cutting it out on the Maker, another digital die cutting machine, or just your regular die cutting machine if you have some butterfly dies that you really like, to go ahead and cut it out that way. I am putting it through the Xyron now, and a little bit late, but what can you do? So we'll move on. As I cut it out, I'm trying to really press it down. This is another reason why I should have put it through the Xyron before, because I wouldn't have got the sticky parts that come through each of those little holes. It's hard to get. You really need to press in between all the holes and stuff, and I didn't feel like doing that. So I did get a little bit of glue sticky, but I just went with it. I was like, okay, I don't feel like spending the time doing that. So now I'm cutting each of the butterflies out. I end up cutting the little cool Art Deco-y tails off of each butterfly and the antennae, just because it was really hard. It wasn't going to work to glue them together. It just wasn't going to work. They're too small of little pieces, and so it was just easier to cut them off and not worry about them. The bottom of the wings look really cool when you cut them out, but are really hard to deal with. The antennae, I had some issues as I was taking them off, and then as the glue dries, it kind of makes a layer, and so it's just easier to cut that whole thing off. You'll see in a minute. But I use this metallic paint by Prima, the Art Alchemy paint line, which is now at Michael's, and that's how I got it. So, and I got it when they were like 50% off, so it was really good deal. Look for deals, people. That's how I buy all my stuff. But I coat each one twice. So I do one, then I paint the other, then I go back to the first one, and it's mostly dry by then, and I paint the second coat. Next, I will allow all of them to fully dry, and I'll bring back the metallic markers, and I'll show you that in just a second. You can see that this color, the light patina, it doesn't cover as intensely as the other two colors, but I actually really liked how that one turned out. I did decide to color with this black, well, I think it's pewter marker. all the black outlines. If I did this again, I'm not sure I would have done that just because it lightens that black up. So once fully dry, I'm using the markers to embellish my embellishments, I guess you could say. Not cover the whole thing, but just cover from the inside of the wing out and from the outside of the wing in a little bit, so then you kind of have a gradient, 3 colors going on. This doesn't need to be super fancy because you're gonna put that black outline layer on top of it. So, the blue, there's that dark blue marker, but I already had so much blue on this big butterfly that I decided to use the copper tones, which I think turned out really pretty. This kind of emerald color, I decided to use purple because I really like purple and green, as well as this gold, because gold and green also go together really well. It's kind of a royal butterfly. A monarch. So, like I said before, just getting the color in there. I should have put a little bit more on this one just because the black line is going to cover that a lot. But you can see here that you get just a little bit of each of those 3 colors, the paint and then the 2 different markers that I put on. So they end up looking really cool and really dimensional. You'd really think that I bought them, they were store-bought embellishments. I think this would be a really fun thing to do if you don't know, if you don't have an idea of what to create, to just cut some of these out and spend a little time making them. And then whenever you're ready to use them, you can just pop them on a card or mixed media project or a scrapbook page, whatever you're wanting to do. Because using these 4 layers of the cardstock, and this is the black cardstock from the Crafter's Companion dark line, it really makes them thick and substantial. So here you can see I had to cut out that paint that was on there. It's just what happens. If I was more careful, I wouldn't have had to do that, but I was also lazy, so it was fine. I felt like it took less time to just cut it out real quick than it would have to really try and paint it. But now, instead of having those butterflies flat, I'm going to be able to glue just the base of the body and have the wings standing up, and they'll look just as pretty from the top as from the side. So that's really why I made 2 of each. If you didn't want to do that and you didn't really care, you wouldn't have to, for sure. So I really like the Cricut online system of creating this stuff. I have the Cricut Access, so a lot of these pieces, or a lot of these die cuts, digital die cuts, however you want to call them, come with that Cricut Access. And so I'm able to just pick out the things that I like rather than having to buy each one individually. I guess it depends, though, how many you're going to do. Next, what I'm doing is coloring through the stencil again. That's what we did at the very beginning. So we've colored through the stencil. We've used the sand texture paste and just regular gloss gel with the markers. All 3 of those work really well. I've colored on top of paint and on top of die cuts with them, with the butterflies, and now we're going back and coloring in the stencil again. The next step, though, that I wanted to do was to add embossing powder over, some clear embossing powder. I just wanted to know what that looked like. To be honest, I didn't have a whole plan. I was just like, oh, this will be cool. So I did that. And it does look pretty cool. You still get a lot of the metallicness, like that is still there. and it's just a little bit more dimensional and glossy. So, cool. Another way to use it, right? I go ahead and do that all over. I decide to add another color, and I really didn't have another green with these metallic markers. Well, I think there is one, but it wasn't really what I wanted, and so I decided just to use an embossing powder. Now, the embossing powder wants to stick to that soft gloss gel, even though it's dry, because it's just a little bit tacky. So you kind of have to brush that off with a dry brush. And I honestly just went over those stars, the textured raised stars, and I didn't worry about it. I did find that some of the green embossing powder kind of melted into the clear embossing powder. And that's just something you might want to note. So next I grabbed some of my resined pieces, or pieces I created with resin. I have a video where I created some of them, like the gray and the white keyholes, as well as the brown with the dots. I totally filmed this whole other video where I created the other ones, and the video's just gone now. I don't know where it went. Like, from my phone to my computer, it's gone. So I'll have to film another one coming up, because I got some new supplies and I had a ton of fun. Like, I really liked it, but I needed to use some of these pieces. Like, if I'm making them for no reason and I'm using them, I feel bad. So I was like, oh, I could add some keys. So I decided that I would add the keys as the body of the butterfly. Now, I had some of that paint left on my brush and I was trying to clean it up. Didn't feel like going over to the sink. So I just sprayed some water and I rubbed the brush, and I was like, oh, I could put this kind of as moonlight, because I'd planned at that point to have one of the keyholes as moonlight. Now, I don't want you to think that there is any sort of meaning or anything to this this mixed media piece. Like, I just thought keys as butterflies would be cute. I'd seen a card that was made like that, and I was like, oh, that'll be cute. There's no meaning beyond that. This whole thing has just been trying different techniques with those markers. So now what I'm doing is coloring each of these pieces with some of this Prima paint. You kind of see I'm having issues. The first layer doesn't really want to go down. Once you let that first layer go down and dry, then you don't have any issues. But I, of course, didn't actually let it dry, so I'm still having issues on the second coat. So you'll see I bring out my heat tool to dry them. And the third coat, I have no issues. So I think the whole second coat was completely a waste of time. I would just suggest to dry them, or to close your lid, let them dry, and then open it again and repaint them the second time if you don't have a heat tool. But I'm lazy and I have a heat tool, so I was like, I ain't waiting. But you see, like, I have no problems with this third coat. It just goes down smooth. So I was hoping maybe I could fix that white one. If you watched that video on the resin pieces that I have out, you'll see, like, it's so easy, and, like, but I made some really ugly pieces. So I was hoping maybe that blue on the back would help. It did not. It did nothing. So, next, I'm not sure why I kept this in, but I'm just showing you guys cleaning off my Tim Holtz Glass Tonic Studios mat, and it's really easy. I really like this mat. So next, I decided to just leave one of the keys green. Like, it's resin, like I tinted the resin green. So I decided to just kind of add some highlights with two of my markers. I think it turned out really cool. I'm excited to do that again in the future. So I did it with one of the green markers and one of the gold markers, and it just makes that look really cool. Next, I decided to add some highlights to this one. I don't know, this one wasn't as cool. I don't know. I guess because the blue resin was already pretty awesome. So, next I took this one that I'd already made silver, and I kind of wanted to distress it with this pewter marker, and it turned out amazing. It really does distress that silver. So here I'm kind of planning out my card and deciding how things will go, such and such. So let's see. I fiddled with it and fiddled with it. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I showed you what stamp I'm going to use. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I'm adding the Tim Holtz collage medium to this. I think I like the gloss gel for more of these heavy pieces. These textural, dimensional pieces I think work better with the gloss gel. It just holds them up a little bit better. So just in the future, if you're ever doing this, I might suggest not using this collage medium for such heavy things. I like the collage medium a lot, and that's why I use it, but for this technique, there's a better adhesive. So I'm adding this final keyhole, and it still looked kind of empty to me. Like the whole piece looked a little empty. So I took out these little, I don't know what they're called. I'd have to look it up. Beads by Prima. I got 3 of them, also from Michael's on sale. And I'm using the collage medium again. And again, I would say that's not the right adhesive for this, to use the gloss gel. And I will go over at the end, go over everything. I'm not sure if I captured it on video or not, but I do go over everything with the gloss gel to really hold it down, because those little beads, which are super light, did not want to hold with that collage adhesive. So just for future reference, if you're doing this, if you're wanting to add these kind of dimensional aspects to something, to not use that collage medium. The collage medium works really well with paper, but not as well with other things. So I had a fun day at Michael's, and I bought this stamping magazine, and it had this huge set of stamps. Look at that. Look at all those stamps. And the whole thing cost me $15. Like, that whole set of stamps with everything else cost me $15. You can't buy half of those stamps for $15. It's craziness. And I was really excited because they're more masculine themed. I have a lot of masculine people in my life, and I want to be able to do things for them, but making super flowery stuff just doesn't seem right. So it also came with some of these papers, which are really cool and have some ephemera you can cut out. I'm really excited about them. I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I'll do something, I'll do something, and I'm sure I'll film it. So when I do, I'll show you. And look at just all those really cool travel-y themed papers. It also comes with this magazine, which I think is supposed to be the draw, but I bought it for the stamps. I'm so bad. And I won't go into it and show you every page or anything. I'll just do a quick flip through of a couple pages because, it's their magazine and I don't want to infringe on their rights or anything. But they do include a lot of really cool ideas for how to use those stamp sets. So I'm real excited to try some of those. For $15, it was totally worth it. So I picked two of the stamps to kind of finish off my whole project, and I decided that it needed to be on distressed paper. So the easiest thing I thought was just this spray, which I bought at Michael's again on that same day. Just had a day at Michael's. Anyway, so the paper, even after heating it, was a little bit wavy, so I just stuck it down with some masking tape. And I'd seen that you can stamp with these markers. I would say that you really have to go slow and stamp each little part of it. So you can't really stamp with them like with words unless you have a stamp positioner. Or if you stamp something that doesn't need to be perfect, you can spray a little water and it'll stamp better. But just know that I stamped these a lot of times. It took a lot of times to get the words really defined there. I think I should have done them. If you really want to stamp with these, stamp on black. I did add a little bit more distressing, like with some distress ink around the edges, and kind of blurred the words a little bit. You'll see that in the final photos. But just, you know, you can stamp with them. They definitely stamped really well. And you do get that metallic-y look. Now I'm taking those same distress spray stains, try saying that 10 times fast, and I just sprayed those little beads. I did put a coat of soft gloss gel on top of them, and that was it. Oh, I did pop up the focus on the journey, not the destination, with some double-sided adhesive foam. Um, so that is also popped up. Look how cute this moon is. It definitely looks distressed and kind of tarnished. I really liked that. So there are all the techniques I could think to use these markers for. Is there any that you can think of that I missed? Have a great day. Thank you so much.